But can it run Crysis? The dreaded question asked in 2007 when you just wanted to flex your brand new quad-core. And that's the legacy of Crysis. It looked so far ahead of its time that it became a benchmark, but also a game very few people could actually experience at its best. Underneath the photorealistic jungles and nanosuit powers was something far more uneven, a shooter that was as brilliant as it was broken. So let's head back to 2007, where we are about to drop onto a mysterious island and change gaming forever. The game begins with tension right out of the gate. A distress call comes through, archaeologists have discovered something they weren't supposed to, and now they're being held hostage by North Korean troops. The US responds by sending in Raptor Team, a special ops unit equipped with experimental nano-suits. You step into the role of Nomad, arguably the least interesting member of the squad despite having the coolest call sign. The rest of the team includes Prophet, the leader, Psycho, Aztec and Jester. The insertion sequence sets the tone. While airdropping onto the island, your suit gets hit out of nowhere, shutting down just before you can deploy your chute. And it's a clever narrative trick. By disabling these suits temporarily, the game can reintroduce these abilities gradually as it comes back online. This makes far more sense than locking powers behind arbitrary progression. Why would a Spec Ops team get deployed with only half their toys? Once you land on the beach, the very first thing that hits you is how stunning the game looks. The dense jungle and the rolling waves feel decades ahead of its time. It's immediately clear that Crytek wanted to show off what their engine could do, and during development, the environment came first. The suit followed. Crysis built on the foundation laid by Far Cry, but the leap in visual fidelity is staggering. Crytek didn't just design this island from imagination either. The developers actually traveled to Tahiti to study how real tropical environments behave. They looked at the way light filters through leaves, how shadows shift across foliage, even how plants sway when disturbed. That research shaped how the island not only looks but also reacts to the player. This attention to detail ties directly into the director's vision for the game. An environment that was both photorealistic and interactive. In 2007, most game engines could achieve one or the other, but rarely both. CryEngine 2 attempted to merge these attributes, and while the results were visually breathtaking, the performance cost was enormous. It pushed beyond what consumer hardware could realistically handle at the time, which is why the game quickly gained its reputation for poor optimization. Even running in DirectX 10, the game showed only minor visual gains over DX9 while performing worse, which further fueled its reputation for rocky optimization. But in truth, it wasn't necessarily bad coding, it was Crytek designing for hardware that simply didn't exist yet.
I'm limited by the technology of my time.
But ironically, that same ambition prevented it from aging gracefully due to its dated optimization. Crysis was designed for faster processors, believing that's where the future was headed, not the multi-core direction it actually took. And that's part of why it never aged well. The game that was built for future PCs ended up struggling to run properly on them, hence the need for the remaster. As you push inland towards the rendezvous point, the game starts layering in subtle tutorials. You're prompted to crouch, then go prone, then smash smash through a barrier. Each mechanic is introduced naturally. Not long after, Prophet suggests attaching a silencer, and this opens up the on-the-fly weapon customization. With a quick menu, you can add or remove attachments like silencers, flashlights, or even scopes without ever breaking immersion. It's a small detail, but it reinforces the game's core philosophy: adaptability. Just like the nanosuit, your weapons can be tailored instantly to fit the situation, whether you're sneaking through a patrol or preparing for open combat. The adaptability defined Crysis. It wasn't about slowly unlocking gear over time, it was about having all the tools at your disposal from the very beginning and using your judgment to decide which combination worked best. That freedom was rare in shooters of the time, and it still feels refreshing to this day. But your first combat encounter begins like a familiar shooter. You stick to cover, line up headshots, and move methodically. But the moment you start tapping into your nanosuit, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not just another soldier. You're something more. There are a few games that can make you feel like an absolute badass. Prototype and The Force Unleashed comes to mind, but Crysis just does it differently. Not long after, you regroup with Jester on the beach, and the two of you push deeper into the island. Then, Aztec's screams cuts through the comms.
Prophet, help me!
And you rush forward only to discover the aftermath.
Shit, son of a bitch!
A soldier in the same advanced nanosuit as you has been completely mauled, his body left in pieces. It plays almost like the setup to a horror story, and I'm not too sure why they didn't lean a little bit more into it. You're a highly trained operative with bleeding-edge technology, and yet one of your own has been torn apart by something unseen. In that moment, the game forces you to recognize you are far from invincible, and that realization is unsettling. After the gruesome discovery, Prophet makes a calculated decision. He vaporizes Aztec's nanosuit to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. It's a chilling moment, but the mission moves forward. As dawn breaks, the game rewards you with one of its most iconic views. You emerge onto a cliff that overlooks the island in full daylight. It's breathtaking. The jungle stretches over the mountain, light beams cut through the trees, and the ocean glistens below. The remaster makes even my 5070 hesitate, but it's worth every frame drop. This is Crysis at its best. Moments where the environment isn't just a backdrop, but a centerpiece. It reminds you why Crytek prioritized the island first. It's not just scenery, it's the star of the game. That said, the presentation isn't identical across versions. The original leaned more towards a muted, realistic palette that gave the island a natural look, while the remaster, depending on the preset, often appears more saturated and brighter, especially under HDR. It's striking to look at, but sometimes feels less grounded. Beyond the color palette, the remaster also makes changes in lighting and performance. Some of the improvements are welcome: high resolution textures, better draw distance, and sharper nanosuit detail, but others feel like trade-offs. The original had a more grounded atmosphere, while the remaster's brighter palette and tweaked lighting can look flashy but less natural. From the cliffside, you drop into your first real outpost encounter. I tried sneaking in quietly, slipping into cloak to move closer, but that lasted about 15 seconds before I blew my cover and chaos broke loose. At that point, I swapped into armor mode, and that allows you to really feel the weight of these weapons, as the recoil is significantly increased. Without strength active, your weapons feel heavier, as accuracy takes a noticeable hit, but you gain the durability to keep fighting. It's a clever balance of risk and reward, and I really appreciate it. But the gunplay didn't click for everyone. Some players pointed out that Crysis lacked the kind of immediate hit feedback other shooters had nailed. Games like Call of Duty 3 and Fear made every bullet feel impactful. Enemies flinched hard and gave instant audio-visual confirmation that shots landed. By comparison, Crysis leaned into subtlety. Enemies sometimes absorbed fire before dropping, and some players even reported what felt like hit registration bugs. But the presentation simply muted their impact. The nanosuit in the remaster works a little bit differently than in the original. Back in 2007, armor was your baseline mode, and you'd pull up a radial menu to swap into strength, speed, or cloak depending on the situation. In the remaster, Crytek tried to streamline things. Strength is now the standard mode. Speed activates automatically whenever you sprint, and you toggle between armor and cloak manually. On top of that, the suit's energy drain was adjusted. Speed especially lasted longer, and I have to admit, I used it a lot more than in the original. This change left longtime fans divided. Some welcomed the streamlined design, but others missed the tactical planning of the original system, where you had to make deliberate choices before every engagement. Luckily, there is an option to return to the original design. My next big encounter quickly reminded me that this wasn't going to be a power fantasy cakewalk. Even inside the nanosuit, rushing in blindly will get you shredded. The game forces you to think tactically, to actually adapt your suit's abilities to the situation rather than leaning on brute force. When I entered the next village, I tried utilizing my suit according to the situation. And that makes these engagements incredibly satisfying. Stringing abilities like this together is where Crysis shines. It's not just another shooter with a gimmick, it's a toolkit that lets you solve encounters your own way. My objective was to clear a checkpoint blocking the road into the valley. But before I could move in, Prophet called with a secondary task.
JSOC indicates that the KPA have a command post on the Eastern Peninsula.
Down the beach was a command post holding intel on enemy positions, and if I grabbed it, it could make the push through the valley easier. It was a detour, but it sounded worth it, so I set off. Getting in was classic Crysis improvisation. I ran past most of the outer defenses, cloaked up and snuck into the camp, and finally downloaded the data without firing a single shot.
Downloading now.
But when I pulled up the map, no new positions were marked. No tactical advantage gained, just a flat confirmation that, yes, there are indeed enemies out there. Thanks. I ran back, stormed the checkpoint and cleared it out, opening a path deeper into the island. That's when Prophet called again. Apparently he found something and oh yeah, it's just a frozen boat in the middle of the jungle.
Looks like someone had a little trouble parking their boat.
This is the boat that the archaeologist used to get to the island, so this must have happened recently. The boys are understandably puzzled by this, demanding answers.
I'm not going anywhere until you give me some answers.
His response?
I've told you everything you need to know.
Just a calm dismissal. He clearly knows more than he's letting on. Before you can dwell on it, we get interrupted. Movement in the trees, and suddenly the team is under attack. It's the first real hint that the threat on the island is far bigger than the KPA. The squad scrambles in pursuit, but by the time the dust settles, Jester is dead.
What's happening, boss?
Another member of Raptor team gone.
I'd tell you if I knew. You have my word.
Pushing further into the jungle, you come across a village that's been frozen over, and dead bodies are strewn across the streets. The aliens were clearly responsible. The next objective is clear: the hostages. Prophet orders me to push ahead alone to gather more intel, while the rest of the team deals with this. It's a bit of a journey, so I grab an armored vehicle and head down the road, introducing a key feature that broadens the sandbox. Crysis doesn't just give you guns and gadgets. Armored vehicles, tanks, boats, even VTOLs, to help with traversal throughout the game. On easier difficulties, you can fire a mounted gun while driving solo, but on higher difficulties, you are forced to swap seats. It's a small tweak that pushes realism, and I really appreciate it. I think the best way to experience Crysis is on either hard or epic, but I'm not here to tell you what to do. The vehicles are satisfying to use, the mounted weapons pack a serious punch, and it sounds amazing. Unfortunately, the coolest vehicles only appear briefly, then vanish from the gameplay loop, leaving you wishing they played a larger role. On the way to the village, you get another optional detour.
You're approaching a KPA radar station.
A tactical network hidden up the hill. The idea sounds promising. Hack into the KPA's comms, uncover hidden intel, maybe gain a tactical edge for what lies ahead. So I stormed the place, trashed the defenses, and dug through the rubble until I found the terminal. The payoff? Confirmation that yes, the hostage is in the very village the story was already pointing me to. Not exactly groundbreaking. This is one of Crysis's recurring problems. Optional objectives exist, but they rarely feel rewarding. You risk time and resources for intel that rarely provides new information, unlock meaningful rewards, or give you a clever advantage for the next encounter. So while the mission design gives you the illusion of choice, in practice, it often pushes you straight back towards the main objective. Still, I did manage to pick up a sniper rifle here, and that changed how I approached the fight. I climbed onto a rooftop and picked off targets from a distance before switching back to my main rifle once the ammo ran dry, now with the added scope. That kind of flexibility is where the game really shines. When the fight spills into the village streets, the destructible environment comes alive. Grenades blow apart shacks, trees collapse under fire, and the nanosuit's abilities let you shift from stealth to chaos at will. It's one of those moments where Crysis delivers on its promise, a battlefield that feels dynamic. The fight inevitably leads me to the town hall, where I uncover the location of the original excavation site. The sound design deserves a special mention here. Mounted guns shoot with satisfying weight, and the acoustics change depending on where they are fired from. The same machine gun sounds sharp and open in the jungle, but heavy and echoing when you hear it from inside a building. It's a subtle detail that was improved upon in the remake, and it makes firefights feel grounded and physical. Equally impressive is the destructibility of the environment. Trees don't just break, they snap exactly where they're hit. The tree would crash to the ground with all its accompanying sounds, and you could even pick up the broken branches to hurl at an unsuspecting soldier, thanks to the game's physics-based objects. Back in 2007, this made headlines. Crytek wanted the world to react to you in ways no other game did. But with that ambition came drawbacks. All of this interactivity demanded huge processing power, contributing to the game's infamous optimization issues. Most of that interactivity was CPU bound, which made even the most powerful GPUs struggle if paired with weaker processors. And while impressive, critics asked the inevitable question: does leveling half a forest really add to the experience, or is it just technical showboating? Crysis made the case for immersion, but sometimes it feels like spectacle outweighed necessity. The next objective takes you into the school, and it's here where I finally grab a shotgun. As a kid playing Crysis, I rarely touched it, and that was a mistake. This thing is an absolute blast, pun intended. Just as I'm about to clear out the last room, Psycho shows up.
Prophet, we've located one of the archaeologists.
And let's be honest, it feels like he's the one guy in the group project who shows up at the end and takes the credit. It's revealed that the hostage has ties to the CIA.
Rosenthal thinks it's evidence of a dead civilization. We're not so sure. I think we woke it up.
This raises questions, but there's no time to dwell, because tanks start rolling in. Naturally, Psycho volunteers to babysit the hostage while I get the fun job of holding off the approaching armor, making this a real team effort. So, do you come here often? Yeah, calisthenics is really just better for your core, do you know what I mean? After the chaos at the school, you head towards the rendezvous point to regroup with Prophet. On the way, the game slows its pace and gives you room to breathe, moving away from the coastline and deeper into the jungle. You're surrounded by lush greenery, shafts of light cutting through the canopy, and the kind of dense, living world Crytek was determined to build. This stretch also gave me more time to enjoy the shotgun. Ooh, this thing is a beast. I discovered its alternative fire modes, toggling between a wide spread for close encounters and a more concentrated shot for mid-range targets. It's a small feature, but it transforms the weapon into something far more versatile. In a game where adaptability is the central theme, even a shotgun can feel flexible. One of the most fascinating and frustrating parts of Crysis is the AI. Like almost everything in the game, it was incredibly ambitious for its time. Developers even talked about how the AI had to learn that if it saw a tree moving across the road, it probably wasn't just the wind. That kind of awareness was cutting edge in 2007. The soldiers weren't just static targets either. They repositioned, flanked, and called for backup. On higher difficulties, they even spoke Korean to remove easy audio cues, reacted faster, and punished mistakes more efficiently. This gave the illusion of intelligence, not just spongier enemies. But with ambition came inconsistency. Sometimes the AI felt laser focused, spotting you through the dense foliage with uncanny precision. This thought compounded in the remaster. Then other times they'd forget what planet they're on. Close quarters combat exposed this most clearly. Enemies funneled neatly into doorways, waiting their turn to be mowed down, or bunched together inside buildings where their coordination completely fell apart. Vehicle encounters exposed similar flaws. Shoot the gunner off the patrol boat and the driver would often keep cruising forward, seemingly resigned to his fate. Crysis' AI was memorable, but for both the right and wrong reasons. When it worked, it made the firefight feel alive and unpredictable. When it didn't, it reminded you that ambition often outpaces execution. When I finally regroup with Prophet at the entrance of a cave, I confront him about the hostage, asking if he knew she was CIA.
The hostage was CIA. You knew, didn't you?
I'd have told you earlier if I thought it made a difference. I'd tell you if I knew. You have my word.
Liar!
Then Prophet casually shares the intel. The archaeologists found something buried in a mountain and we need to find out what that is. Geez, I'm glad he kept that massive bombshell to himself. I have no idea how I could have dealt with such sensitive information. And that's really the story in a nutshell. The narrative feels flat compared to the groundbreaking gameplay and visuals. Critics at the time agreed. Crysis had plenty of spectacle, but very little storytelling depth. The aliens were intriguing, but the delivery was clumsy, and the dialogue often bordered on shallow. For a game that pushed boundaries everywhere else, the narrative felt like an afterthought. Functional, but generic, and destined to be overshadowed by the game's tech. After Prophet's revelation, your next task is to disable another signal jammer, and he gets gently whisked away as well. Conveniently, the KPA set it up right along your path, and after clearing out another village, you shut it down. Structurally, it's a straightforward mission. Move in, eliminate the resistance, and flip the switch. But it's also where one of Crysis's bigger design issues becomes clearer. On paper, Crysis is a sandbox. The island is huge, the nanosuit gives you multiple tactical options, and the missions can be tackled in a variety of ways. But it's important to clarify what that really means here. The missions themselves are still linear. The story unfolds in a fixed order, and objectives rarely branch. The freedom comes in how you approach each encounter, not where you go or what you do next. It's a tactical sandbox, not an open world one. In practice, the missions start feeling repetitive, and the world doesn't give you much reason to explore beyond your objectives. So, despite the open map, the game often feels more linear than it looks. You're technically free to move around, but without meaningful rewards for staying off the critical path, there's really little incentive to do so. The sandbox feels underutilized, wide in scope, but shallow in purpose. Another common critique back in 2007 was that for all its ambition, Crysis was surprisingly short. Most players could finish the game in under 10 hours, and that only amplified the feeling that the sandbox wasn't fully explored. The game gives you this enormous island and then rushes you through it before you can really stretch your legs. It's like being handed a Ferrari and then told to keep it under 60. It's not that the game ends too soon, it's that you're left wishing that there was just more to do inside this incredible world. Crytek later tried to address that short runtime with Crysis Warhead, a standalone expansion that retold events from Psycho's perspective. A solid addition, but not enough to change the broader pacing issues. After disabling the jammer, you finally reach the excavation site. This is where the story circles back to its mysterious opening. I decided to take a full stealthy approach, and carefully making my way through patrols, picking the right spot to recharge my suit and move from cover to cover. Inside, you find Dr. Rosenwald standing beside the fossil that started this entire mess. He's arguing with a North Korean general, warning him that whatever was buried should stay buried. Rosenwald's daughter, who originally sent the distress call, is being held deeper in the mountain, and the situation grows more desperate by the second.
The fossil! It's still alive!
Just as you reveal yourself, things take a turn for the worst.
Kyung has my team, my daughter, up at the mine in the mountains. You have to get to them. I think we've made a terrible mistake. What have I done?
Oof. Just, chill for a sec. Reinforcements swarm the area, but rather than engage, I cloaked, slipped back into the shadows, and snuck out the same way I came in. It was one of the rare missions where stealth felt like the right answer. Crysis gives you the tools to brute force every encounter, but sometimes it's smarter and far more satisfying to vanish without firing a shot. That mix of scale, tension, and freedom captures what Crysis does best. It lets you decide how the story beats play out, even if the actual narrative rails are still pretty rigid. After slipping out of the excavation site, you make your way towards the extraction zone. It's a fair distance away, and the game encourages you to grab a boat for the first stretch. It's here that Crysis flexes another small detail most players might have missed. Physics on the water. When you switch from the driver's seat to the mounted gun, the current actually pushes your boat off course. It's such a subtle touch, but it shows how much effort Crytek poured into simulating even the smallest aspects of this world. Eventually, I abandoned the water and moved onto the road, heading across a bridge and clashing with KPA forces stationed there. By the time you clear the path, it's clear that the conflict is escalating. US forces are beginning their full assault on the island, and you are caught in the middle of the build-up. The scale of the war suddenly feels larger than your personal mission. It's one of those transitional points where the narrative shifts gears, and you realize you're moving from small squad skirmishes to the front lines of something much bigger. The next stop is a graveyard shrouded in mist and dim moonlight. It's one of the most atmospheric areas in the game, and the whole place feels unnervingly quiet, but the calm does not last. My bride finally arrives, but when I warned them that the LZ might still be hot, their nerves of steel suddenly vanish. Cowards. It seems that the Koreans got their hands on nanosuit tech.
I think these guys have nanosuits.
I'll be dead. They aren't supposed to have that technology yet.
They look like knockoffs ordered from Wish, but they really pack a punch. Their enhanced strength and durability make them tougher than the average soldier. It's a clever way to put you against a distorted reflection of yourself. Clearing them out is tense but rewarding, and once the area is secured, you scavenged a beta scope from one of their rifles before rendezvousing with Psycho at a waiting VTOL.
Alright, Nomad!
It's a welcome breather after the graveyard gauntlet, and the shift in scale is immediate. You're being dropped straight into the hot zone. This section works because it layers tone. From eerie tension in the graveyard to a sudden firefight against enhanced soldiers, and finally the transition to full-scale warfare. Crysis doesn't always nail pacing, but moments like this shows how effective the game can be when it changes rhythm. The US forces rally at a staging area where you briefed on your next target, the KPA's anti-aircraft guns. Until they're destroyed, VTOLs can't land closer to the fight. With the mission in hand, you push down the valley alongside a squad. And for a moment, the full-scale assault feels intense and alive. But as soon as you hit the road, the soldiers stop, and you're forced to move on alone. Why? The extra firepower amplified the moment, so it makes no sense that they wouldn't send even a small group with you.
Oh man, I've spotted a KPA comms trailer near some shacks to the north of the harbor.
Crysis also dangles optional objectives here, and this is where cracks in the design start to show again. Secondary tasks might point you towards critical intel or a munitions storage, but they rarely deliver anything meaningful. Ammo is easy enough to come by from fallen soldiers, and most intel amounts to little more than filler. For a game that hands you so many tools up front, these extras often feel like busy work, designed to pad length rather than enrich the experience. Imagine if those side missions had been used to reveal alternative infiltration routes, hidden sniper nests, or distractions that shifted enemy patrols. Instead, they're mostly generic confirmations of what you already knew, and in a game this ambitious, that feels like a missed opportunity. The final AA gun is located at the harbor, a heavily fortified area crawling with KPA soldiers. The harbor itself is a blast to clear. Taking down the final gun is not only visually spectacular, but mechanically satisfying. It marks a destroyer for an airstrike, and you get to watch as jets strafe it into the abyss. It's one of those moments where the game fully leans into spectacle, and it absolutely works. With the skies cleared, VTOLs can now finally deliver reinforcements. Tanks.
Take one of our tanks and follow the column through the tunnel.
And here, the game shifts gears again. Sliding into the driver's seat of a US tank feels incredible. The cannon feels powerful. The mounted miniguns shreds infantry, and for once, you're not sneaking or sprinting, you're steamrolling. Unlike the vehicles earlier in the game that feel more like one-off toys, the tank is the star of this mission. Crysis balances the power by arming KPA infantry with anti-tank weapons and making your armor non-repairable. So while you feel unstoppable at first, you're still vulnerable if you get careless. It's a great mission, smashing through defenses and leveling train carriages before linking up with allied tanks to push deeper into the valley. And as you fight, you can see the mountain looming ahead, crumbling as if the island itself is protesting what's coming next. with a finale that's an absolute chef's kiss after a masterpiece. Beautiful. The next objective takes you to the entrance of a mine near the mountain. The road leading there has been obliterated, leaving you no choice but to push forward alone. One of the rare times the game gives a believable reason why you're suddenly separated from the squad. Inside, the area is swarming with KPA soldiers, and for the first time, nanosuit-equipped enemies become a regular part of the combat mix. These fights showcase the full potential of your suit. To survive, you'll need to weave every ability together. Cloak to sneak into position, strength to vault onto rooftops and grab vantage points, speed to reposition when pinned down, and armor to tank incoming fire. It's a demanding sequence, but also one of the most satisfying, because it again forces you to use the nanosuit more than a gimmick. It becomes your lifeline. This is exactly what I mean when I say there's no reason to explore. By this point, you already know these buildings won't hold anything beyond extra ammo, so the game never really encourages you to look around. Instead, you just follow the path laid out in front of you. After clearing out the positions near the entrance, I move inside the mines and run into some more resistance, but nothing I couldn't handle. It's also clear by now that the entire mountain is starting to come apart. And finally, you come face to face with the North Korean general holding Helena, Rosenwald's daughter, hostage.
We may have discovered the greatest source of power the world has ever known.
She's right! You have to stop this! You could kill us all!
Jesus Christ!
After a heated exchange, the Koreans force open the alien doors, unleashing a violent power surge, and that lets you break free and grab a weapon. The confrontation escalates into a boss fight that's surprisingly engaging, especially compared to the more generic alien encounters coming later. The general is a tough opponent who requires constant movement. You'll cloak to break line of sight, use bursts of speed to sprint into cover, then leap to higher ground to line up shots, and it feels far more tactical than the scripted bullet sponge battles the other shooters relied on at that time. Taking him down feels like a genuine victory. And escaping with Helena as the mountain begins to collapse solves the sense of escalation. The aliens aren't just a rumor anymore, they're here, and the island is literally tearing itself apart in response. With the general defeated, Helena extracted, and you now buried beneath the mountain, the only way forward is through the alien structure. The tone shifts instantly. Gone are the sunlit jungles and open valleys. Now you are moving through a dark alien world. Gravity disappears, your suit begins to freeze, and disorientation sets in almost immediately. Crytek had partnered with Blur Studios early in development to create the game's cinematic trailer, a breathtaking piece that set an almost impossible visual benchmark. Crytek took it as a challenge. The in-game engine needed to match the trailer in real time, and to their credit, they pulled it off. But it's hard not to feel the alien level exists, largely because of that challenge. It's visually jaw-dropping. The kaleidoscope of light, motion, and the zero-gravity spectacle, but it contributes little to the pacing or the tone of the rest of the game. It feels less like a continuation of Crysis and more like a tech demo inserted to prove CryEngine could live up to the Blur's cinematic vision. Your weapons suddenly handles differently, with recoil spiking dramatically. Fire the shotgun once and you're staring at the ceiling. Enemies dart around unpredictably, and in an environment where up and down no longer mean much, tracking them becomes frustrating instead of thrilling. To Crytek's credit, the alien AI is solid. They shoot, reposition, charge from unexpected angles, even hide to bait your attention before attacking from behind. But the combination of floaty movement, heavy recoil, and disorientation makes the encounters feel more like a chore than a challenge. challenge, where you are fighting both the enemies and the environment itself. It's a shame, because the setup had potential. The early glimpses of the aliens feel eerie, almost horror-like, echoing back to Aztec's death. But instead of leaning into that tension, the section drags into long, exhausting firefights that undercut the mood. Most of the time, I found myself cowering in a corner, waiting for enemies to drift close enough so I could pick them off one by one. Progress through the area was slow, and while the environment is undeniably beautiful and technically impressive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. By the time you finally exit, you're less awestruck and more relieved to be leaving. Escaping the alien structure drops you into a transformed world. The once tropical island is now buried under snow and ice, locked in a bubble of some sort of alien energy. It's a dramatic contrast from the warm greens and blues of the jungle. The aliens, known as the Ceph, swarm the area, and while their AI remains sharp, you at least feel grounded again. With zero gravity disorientation, the combat is more manageable, even if the aliens themselves are relentless. At the rendezvous point, you find the rest of your squad wiped out. Against the odds, Prophet suddenly reappears. His nanosuit is damaged, yet somehow he's wielding an alien weapon, with no real explanation as to how he got it, or even how he survived. It's one of those narrative leaps that Crysis just brushes past, leaving you with more questions than answers. Prophet hands you the alien gun and asks you for help reaching a heat source so his suit can regenerate, escorting him through fire-to-fire encounters while fending off waves of Ceph highlights just how dire things have become. For the first time, the nanosuit feels fragile, and the squad you relied on is gone. It's a sharp shift in tone, pushing you from empowered soldier to survivor, holding the line. Finally, you reach the edge of the energy bubble, where the last group of US Marines are preparing to evacuate. The sense of scale has grown. This isn't just about an elite squad anymore, it's a full war, and humanity is already on the back foot. The pacing here shifts into overdrive, giving you no chance to breathe, as a VTOL goes down in the distance. It's the same one carrying Helena, and you're immediately tasked with a rescue operation. It's a strong narrative beat. Your objective stops being abstract intel or jammers and become personal again. Prophet charges into the wreckage to pull her free, while you man an AA gun to cover the skies, fending off waves of Ceph as they close in.
Prophet, you go with her. I'll lay down suppressing fire till you're airborne.
With tensions still high, I eventually regroup at the final evacuation point, a desperate last stand against overwhelming numbers.
Get out of here, Vulture!
What a badass. The mission Ascension is infamous amongst Crysis veterans. Back in 2007, it brought even the most powerful PCs to their knees. It was so demanding that it was actually cut from the remaster at launch, only reintroducing it later once optimizations caught up. And it's easy to see why. It's one of the most visually and technically ambitious missions in the entire game. You climb into the cockpit of a VTOL, taking to the skies as the island tears itself apart beneath you. Tornadoes rip across the landscape, alien forces swarm the skies, and your squadron fights to hold formation as chaos unfolds around you. If this doesn't make you feel like a proper badass, nothing will. It's exhilarating and cinematic, and easily one of my favorite parts of the game. The only problem I have with it is that there isn't enough. From there you arrive on the carrier, the USS Constitution, where the final act unfolds. It's a shift in tone yet again. Gone is the freedom of the sandbox island. Instead, you're funneled into the corridors and decks of a massive ship. The final narration falls flat. The US pushes for a nuclear strike, while Helena tries to be the voice of reason, though ultimately in vain.
I'm not gonna sit around and hypothesize while the safety of our planet is at stake.
Come find me when you're through with this asshole.
And that's never been done before.
Let's nuke the bastards.
We make a quick stop in the armory, where the story takes a moment to show you that Prophet is starting to lose it.
Where you going?
I'm gonna finish this. His nuke won't even scratch the surface.
Prophet, wait!
Fully aware of the nuclear strike and still prepared to defy orders and head back to the island. When the time comes, the Admiral orders the strike. Unsurprisingly, it only makes things worse, possibly even strengthening the Ceph, and the ship is suddenly under overwhelming attack. The carrier sequence begins with promise. Marines scramble across the deck and the ship's guns thunder as the Ceph descend in force. For a moment, it feels like the perfect payoff. Everything has escalated to a final stand and you're right in the middle of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't really hold up. The close quarters layout of the carrier strips away the freedom that made earlier encounters so compelling. Instead of weaving between trees, flanking patrols, or using the nanosuit as a sandbox toolkit, you're fighting in tight corridors and confined arenas. The spectacle is there, but the gameplay feels restricted. After hours of adapting in the open jungle, being funneled into corridors felt like a little bit of a downgrade. It all culminates in the final boss fight against the alien war machine rising out of the sea. On paper, it should be a jaw-dropping climax, the full might of the US military struggling to bring down an enormous Ceph Leviathan while you provide the killing blow. In practice, it's fine. You fire rockets, dodge predictable attacks, and wait for weak points to open up. Compared to the tense duel with the Korean general earlier, it feels generic, more like a bullet sponge shooting gallery. The final boss ends up being far less engaging than expected, just a sequence of scripted weak points, capped off with a final rocket into the ship's opening, and that's that. After the chaos, we receive an unexpected message. Prophet survived the strike and is still fighting inside the bubble. With no choice, we turn around to finish this once and for all. It's a cliffhanger that leaves more questions than answers. Unfortunately, it was never really properly explored in the games themselves, only in a handful of prequel comics set 3 years before Crysis 2. Looking back, Crysis is a fascinating contradiction. It's both one of the most ambitious shooters ever made and one of the most uneven. On the one hand, it delivered a sandbox unlike anything else in 2007. Nanosuit powers that let you approach combat in countless ways. An environment that reacted to your every move. And visuals so far ahead of its time that the phrase "but can it run Crysis" became an enduring meme. The cruel irony is that Crytek built a world ahead of its time, but most players in 2007 couldn't actually experience it the way it was meant to be seen, because very few people had the hardware to run it properly. On the other hand, it struggled with pacing, inconsistent AI, weak optional objectives, and a story that started strong but collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. Despite its flaws, Crysis remains iconic. It wasn't just another shooter, it was a statement of intent, a glimpse into what the future of gaming could look like. For some, it's remembered as a technical benchmark. For others, Crysis, it's the feeling of sprinting across the battlefield in speed mode, cloaking behind patrols, or watching a shack explode into splinters under a grenade. Revisiting it today in 2025 feels like stepping into that vision again. The optimization may still be finicky, and the story may never have lived up to its potential, but the core of what made Crysis legendary is still there. It's a flawed masterpiece, but one that pushed the industry forward in ways few games dare to try. And for that reason alone, it deserves a place in history. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed this, maybe consider subscribing, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.